The following podcast is brought to you on behalf of the Saracens Supporters Association and is not an official product of Saracens Limited. Content provided voluntarily by our guests and contributors are of their own opinion, which may change over time and should not be taken as fact, particularly as the podcast hosts are regularly talking drivel anyway. If you've got some drivel of your own you'd like to share, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Fezcast_SSA. You can search Facebook for the Fezcast, or you can email fezcast.ssa@outlook.com.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome to not only Fezcast 700 and 700 and whatever, I don't know how many it is, I can't even get my words around it, but also the last one of the season, Matt. It's our last Fezcast of season 3.
It is. I'm feeling very summery. It's
well,
it's come
indeed,
a long way.
Mate. I mean, thankfully, you guys, we don't go on to YouTube or anything like that. But I mean, so Matt's looking resplendent in his Saracens Hawaiian shirt, and I've decided just to go with the Saracens playing replica jersey because we do have a big guest returning to the Fezcast today. Lucy Wray's going to come on and have a chat with us, and we'll revisit what we spoke to her about at the start of the season and review the season and discuss all the different things about the club. Matt, you've and Joe have got together and put together the women's team of the year, yeah?
We have, and we've done it very, very thoroughly, actually. So this is probably quite a long podcast, but we definitely needed to do the women's team justice. Although we sort of fell short in the semi-final. Really, it's been a long and difficult season for a lot of people, and there's upwards of 30, 40 players that have contributed massively to the season. So putting a 15-player team of the season together was very, very tricky. So we've given it our best alongside everyone on Twitter and Instagram and yourself, Jez. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, we're signing off for the season with that, definitely.
Let's have an advert, and then you'll be on with Joe and discuss the women's team, and then we'll be talking to Lucy Wray after that.
You're listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Welcome to the very last episode of the Fezcast for the season. We've just about made it. There's still a little bit of rugby to be played, but sadly we're not involved in it. But what it does mean is that Joe's here with me. We're going to talk through the women's team of the season, as we did with the men's. We've picked ours. You've picked yours on social media. We don't agree with each other as usual, so there's plenty to talk about. But first, Joe, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. It's felt like a really long season this season, what with World Cup break and Premier Cups and everything else. So, it's been a long season. It's a shame we're not there at the last hurdle, but the game at the weekend will be nonetheless, I think, a good display of rugby. Down at Queen's Home, as it's going to be affectionately known for the week, apparently.
Yes, yeah. We'll have to wait and see. But for now, let's focus on Saracens and our team of the year. We're going to start, like we did with the men, we're going to start with the backs. We probably need to talk about... Let's go in the centres. Let's do that first. Because Sarah McKenna stepped in at centre, having not played there for quite a long time, because of the signing of Jess Breach. And I'm going to rope her into this discussion as well, because she came in and played 15. And you think, yeah, Sarah may be possibly losing her place in the side a little bit there, but she really, really stepped up at 12, didn't she, Joe?
I think she's been absolutely superb this season. I think it's probably been one of her best seasons in recent years. Actually, I think she's been brilliant. tackling, in defence, in attack. She scored a couple of tries. And let's just go back to that drop goal, because I still sit there and watch it on replay. And I was stood right behind the goal down at Dings RFC and watched that sail over with the camera and was so shocked I couldn't even take a picture. So that's how good I think she's been this season. I think she's been fantastic. So, yeah, really, really good in the centres this year, I think, for McKenna.
Absolutely, yeah. She was one of the easiest picks, I think, for everyone to make in the team. But her semi-replacement at fullback for this season was Jess Breach, who basically came in, hit the ground running, and did what we know Jess Breach can do, really, didn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she's played a couple of games there for England as well, but she played most of her career out on the wing for Quins, but it just shows that she's versatile. And once she gets those booster rockets on, it doesn't really matter whether she's coming from fullback or whether she's herring down the wing. She's still fast, and there's not many people that are going to stop her. So, I think she's been a great acquisition this year. Stick her on the wing, stick her in fullback. It doesn't really matter. She's been a really fantastic signing. Clearly, she's been enjoying her rugby, I think, this year, and playing nicely with England as well. So, a few tries to her name this year.
Absolutely, yeah. She has been fantastic, and I think it's one of my favourite sights in rugby. Actually, is watching a stream and a wide-angle camera, and you can just see Jess building up a head of steam about 10 metres behind the plane. You think, here we go. But yeah, two pretty easy picks in the team there, and the other one that was very easy for everyone, and someone who's actually dipped in and out the team at times a little bit this season is Lottie Clapp, who once again fantastically reliable on the wing, co-captain in the team now, but has also in a chat that we had with her this season recognised that she does need to step away occasionally and have a few games off, which she did. I think she played 3 or 4 seasons without ever missing a match, whereas this season that's been recognised. But Lottie still had a great season, hasn't she, Joe?
Oh, she's been brilliant, and she's obviously been out at a World Cup as well for the United States. So she's clearly been recognised that she's playing well. She's just a steady hand. She's so nice and calm, isn't she? You see her on the pitch there. She's always smiling. Except perhaps when she gets a sneaky yellow card, which I think was slightly unfortunate, but it was probably the only blemish she's had, not just this season, but over a number of seasons, I would estimate. So yeah, Lottie's just always misreliable, isn't she? Miss Clapp, misreliable. For me, what I've really noticed about Lottie this season is her tackling. She's just been brilliant in defence, I think, this year.
I'm going to go straight onto the other wing, and this is where we do start to have a change in people's thinking. Now, across yourself, me, and Jez, who have picked these teams, and our followers on Instagram, we found it very easy to pick Corinne Grant on the other wing for Saracens. She's actually, I think, played more games than anyone else on the wing, even more than Lottie Clapp potentially this season, and has scored not only her first try, but several others to go with it as well. And if we'd have actually done a sort of improved or breakthrough player of the season, it's potentially Corinne Grant, is it not?
Oh yeah, I think she's been really enjoying her rugby this year for both Saracens and for Scotland. She scored her first try for the Scottish team in the Six Nations as well. Playing with a smile on her face, and you can just tell that she's enjoying her rugby. And again, another one that I wouldn't want to have to run after if I was trying to tackle her either. She's got some speed on her as well. So, and again, I think she's been cracking in defence as well. So, one of the reasons that she made my team of the year was just that nice balance of attack and defence from Corinne, and she's just a thoroughly nice person as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Great to speak to her this season, and yeah, I think you listen to some of the words that have come out of the club, particularly from Alex Osterbury. Is they've finally had a run of games to be able to to have Corinne in the team for lots of different reasons. She hasn't been able to play quite as much rugby as anyone might have wanted her to, and this year it really has been that breakthrough. So she has made all of our teams of the year, except for our good followers on Twitter. And we'll come on to the reason why shortly. But just very quickly to come back to the other person that has made everyone's team of the year, and very, very good to see her back in a Saracen shirt this season after a very long time out with injury, was Sydney Gregson, who probably a little bit under the radar, but has had a very, very, very good season.
Oh, she's just been really consistent, I think. As I say, consistency is one of the brilliant things about Sydney. You know exactly what you're going to get with her. She's tough at tackling. Sometimes I think there's 3 or 4 Sydneys on the pitch. She just seems to be everywhere. And again, great on attack as well. So good to see her back. She had an awful injury and then a couple of setbacks as well, which kept her off the field for pretty much all the last season. So it's great to see her back there. She, again, is another one playing with a smile on her face, always smiling for my camera. Somehow she seems to be there posing for the camera every opportunity. Doesn't matter whether she's got blood streaming out of her nose and, cotton wool sticking out of it, or whether she's carrying my dog at the side of the pitch. She's always got a smile for people. And again, I think she's played really, really consistently well this year. Great partnership with McKenna as well, I think.
Yeah, that partnership 12-13 has been brilliant, and we haven't spoken about the likes of Cara Wardle and Hannah Casey, and then Nyla Alejandro in the back line as well, who've all contributed quite a lot to this season. But it does just show the talent that we've got in those areas, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, and we should give actually Chopper Casey a little bit of a shout out because she passed all her training for the London Fire Brigade and often turns up at the matches, including the one down at Exeter the other week in London Fire Brigade uniform, having just come off shift. So that's well done to her. Really, I think somebody that's having to carve out that career and doing really well on that side of life in general as well. But Cara co-captained with Fee McIntosh beginning part of the season whilst we had our internationals away for a couple of games as well, and I think that's really done her the world of good this year as well. So we could have had 2 teams of the season if we're being brutally honest, and we'll probably cover that off later as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that's before you even you mentioned the cup team, and obviously Cara stepping up as captain. I mean, the likes of Abby Evans or even Katie Johnson, who didn't really get to play in the league particularly, but made big contributions to that cup team. It's a very well balanced squad from this season, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. But I've avoided the issue of the difficult picks so far, and I'm still going to avoid the most tricky one. We're going to talk about the scrum half because it is essentially a flip of a coin at scrum half. Anna Goddard, I believe, has played a handful of league games and a few off the bench in the cup as well, has made a contribution to this season, but Ella Vivas and Leanne Infante have pretty much shared the game at 9. Both different styles of player, I think, and both different in terms of the experience they've got at international level, certainly, and in the club game as well. But I think we all found it very, very, very tricky to choose between the 2 of them. And I think yourself and I, Joe, have actually gone 2 different ways. And it's been left to our social media followers to settle the difference. So what was your thinking behind picking Leanne Infante over Ella Vivas?
I just think for me that when the team has needed somebody in the middle there calling the shots, you can always hear Leanne. And for me, sometimes the girls have just needed that as a little bit of a pick-me-up and a little bit of direction when things perhaps haven't been going their way. But that said, that was the last position that I filled when I was doing my team of the year, because I think Ella has had, again, an absolutely superb season. She's been in as part of that England setup as well. She had her England debut. I just think the 2 of them, I mean, you've got 2 international world-class scrum halves in the same team, and trying to give them an equal pitting on the field. I mean, rather Alex Osterbury's choice than mine, actually, because I'd be sitting there probably scratching my head how I could play two scrum halves on the same pitch if I could. Because both of them, speed off the breakdown, speed off the ruck is just brilliant. And I think they've both had fantastic seasons. And Leanne just edged it, just literally by a hairline for me, just with some of her leadership qualities, which I think is going to come for Ella as well when she gets a bit more experience. We have to remember that Ella is still quite young in her career, and Leanne's got that little bit more experience. But I think, the two of them, you see them operating together in warm-ups and such like. I think they're a great pairing, although they can't play together. I think they just really just sort of feed off each other, and you can see that they work hard to improve each other's game. And that must be a really rewarding experience for both of them and for the players around them to see two scrum halves that are desperately competitive to play on the pitch, but also support each other in terms of getting better and improving. So it was a really, really tough one for me.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree, to be honest. And I think even you say you can't get them both in the same team. I think actually once or twice this season it did happen very briefly when it was enforced. Yeah. And that is actually an advantage of having Ella in your team, because she's got experience of playing on the wing and even at centre as well, which is a good part of her game. And you're right, she's steadily improving and certainly pushing Leanne pretty hard as well, which can only be a good thing. And yet I couldn't separate them at all. Ella got the nod for me because I decided to go for the one that had played more minutes as opposed to the one that had played in the bigger matches, which may or may not be the right way of going about things. There was no logic behind it. I couldn't pick it. Jez has also gone for Ella. Both our Twitter and Instagram followers went for Leanne Infante. I will concede it. Leanne is the scrum half in the team of the year, but Ella's coming on at half time, I think is what we're saying.
Easy, yeah.
Now, we found that difficult. I don't know that we necessarily individually found fly half more difficult than scrum half, but I think there was just a lot more variety to choose from this season. Any other year, Zoe Harrison's walking into your team of the year as fly half. She unfortunately picked up a terrible injury this year, played 6 games. And we've got, 4 other fly halves that have contributed this season. You go back to the cup games, Lisa Martin played as every time I think Lisa has left the fold at Saracens, she jumps on a train and pops up again. Kirsty Exley, who stepped in playing down at Old Albanians, who was pretty solid in the cup as well, it must be said. I think Katie Johnson actually played there for 1 game as well. You've then got the signing of Flo Williams, which was very, very astute. Obviously, things not going brilliantly at Wasps, and that did lead to that, so it's a bit of a shame, but a very, very handy pickup. And then, of course, Holly Aitchison coming back in after the start, missing a fair bit at the start of the season, and playing the big games as R10. It was pretty tough all round.
It was, and I think most people, myself included, would probably agree that they've looked at the back end of the season and perhaps some of the seemingly bigger games. We have to remember that Surrey's did not have a great start to the season. That said, Zoe had some really, really good games prior to her injury. But then people will have seen Holly come in, and again, her kicking game has improved second to none, I think, over the last season and a half. Not just at club, but at country as well. And she's been sat in the number 10 shirt in Zoe's absence in the Red Roses setup as well. So again, I think without the injury, Zoe we'd probably be not having this conversation now, and we'd probably be having a conversation at who sits at centre with Holly Aitchison. But this is the joy, but also the conundrum of Saracens women. You've got so many versatile players that can play different positions, and they seem to just slot in there with ease. But for me, just around consistency, Holly pipped it for me.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in trying to look at it myself, I did very similar to what I did with Scrum Half, sort of trying to look at even just the respective amount of time that each of them played. And to be fair, between Holly and Flo Williams, it was fairly similar. There's not really any point in looking at who's kicked the most points, which is a stat that's available to us, because you have to then look at the types of games they were playing. And let's be perfectly honest, if you're playing against DMP Wasps this season, you're probably going to kick more than in those big games at the back end of the season. So although both Zoe and Flo Williams have got more points this season than Holly has played in those bigger games. So I've slightly leaned the other way to what I did at Scrum Half. And I was with you. I just had to pick Holly Aitchison. Started 10 league matches, more than either of the other two as well, if we want to look at that. But yeah, very, very tough to do. So you and I agree that Holly is our 10. Our Instagram followers did exactly the same and picked Holly. Jez went for Zoe, which, again, absolutely fine. The games that Zoe was able to play, she was pretty much 10 out of 10. But, yeah, it was just a shortened bit of the season, which is why we didn't. The Twitter polls were the interesting bit. When we first put out number 10, gave everyone the options, it came out as Holly. And then right at the end, we offered up the final place in the backs after everything was done and dusted, and there ended up a straight shootout between Zoe Harrison and Corinne Grant. There's me thinking that Corinne was an absolute shoo-in for everyone's team. Twitter decided otherwise and popped Zoe Harrison in there as well. So there's been a bit of a reshuffle in the Twitter team, and both Zoe and Holly are playing, and Corinne is the one that misses out. Democracy in action, how about that? The forwards is even trickier, I think. So we're going to have to try and tackle that. I want to go straight to number 2, because on the face of it, it's an easy choice. But actually that does a great disservice to the fact that we've had 2 hookers this season who have both been scoring tries for fun and playing brilliantly. So yes, we've all picked May Campbell, but first, let's just talk about Jodie Retty.
Jodie Retty, legend. I mean, again, she just so consistent. Her throw-in like arrows at the line out. As you said, she's been scoring tries, enjoying her rugby. And, you know, again, just a thoroughly nice person. A regular in Scotland side as well, albeit, again, as a replacement largely. But you see what she does when she comes on, and what a finisher to come on when you've got that quality of player ready to take up the mantle. Strong in attack, strong in defence. Yeah, brilliant player. Enjoyed watching her play again this season.
Absolutely, yeah. She's been fantastic. I mean, has made a lot of appearances off the bench as well, but what a player to have off the bench, really. But May Campbell just keeps getting better.
You know, debut for the Red Roses, albeit not one that she will probably be telling her kids about. But yeah, she's just... I've spoken to a few people about May Campbell who have played against her, and apparently she's one of the most difficult people to tackle across the whole Premier 15s. Now, whether that's because she's 4'11", and there's not a huge amount of her for tackling, I would like to argue that it's just her leg drive and the way she secures the ball. There's not many times you see May Campbell fumble the ball. I've seen her score an outstanding try with her face this year, which is probably my photograph of the season, although she's begged me not to share it too many more times on social media. But yeah, just an absolutely outstanding player, and of course sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and what a player to sponsor. So she's just been so consistent. loves her rugby, smiles all the time, especially when she's going over the try line, which, coming off a line out, if you're 5 metres away from the try line, your money is on May Campbell. I would say 9 out of 10 times that she's going to get that leg drive along with the rest of the girls, and she's going to be the one that's picking up the ball and coming up with a smile at the end of it. Fantastic season for me.
Absolutely. And we do, we've always taken the mick out of May Campbell for scoring all of her tries from 5 metres, but I do actually want to bring it back a little bit. 5 metres for someone who is 4'11" is still quite a long way to travel. The next bit, now I'm going to lump everyone here together, but there is a little bit of a change among the teams to do. The very easy pick for the vast majority of us, both as hosts of the podcast and on social media, was to pick the trio of Marley Packer, Poppy Cleal and Georgia Evans. Worth talking about all 3 of those before we come on to a little error that may have been made in someone's team. Let's talk about them as a whole, because we talk about all 3 of them individually all the time. How lucky have we been as a club to have, particularly Poppy and Marley for the time that we've had them, but then Georgia coming into the fold with that as well. They are 3 absolute monsters in the back row and sometimes in the second row as well.
Oh, listen, if you were going to pick a Prem 15s team of the season, those 3 would probably make it. Not just the Saracens team of the year, but the Prem 15s team of the year. They can play in so many different positions. They're so versatile. They swap amongst themselves wherever they're going to play. Georgia's played second row, back row. Same with Poppy, back row 8, second row. Marley in at 7, Marley in at 8. Who knows where Alex is putting them from week to week? And it must keep other coaches and other teams, so much on the back foot, thinking, where are they going to be? And it must feel like sometimes they're seeing twins of them, and not just because Poppy is a twin, but just twins of 2 or 3 Marley Packers across the field, because they've all been brilliant this year. And again, Georgia had an awful injury that she's come back from. Really good to see her back playing and enjoying her rugby, both at club and international level. Again, out at the World Cup. And then Poppy's had a few niggles this year, which has been unfortunate for her. She's missed out on a few games, particularly in the England setup. But again, always good to see her, with those offloads and running between her and Marley. They just make a brilliant midfield duo there. That again, who'd want to come up against those 2 when they're on fire? And then you've got the Jackal Queen Marley Packer, who's over the ball quicker than a flash of lightning more often than not.
Before we move on, we do have to point out a clerical error that has happened in our team of the year on the Fezcast. Our esteemed lead host, Jez, has managed to pick his team, whether deliberately or accidentally, without Poppy Cleal in it. And I haven't given him a chance to rectify that. So yeah, Jez doesn't have Poppy in his team. So yeah, Jez's deliberate mistake aside, there is one more position that everyone has been able to agree on, and that is on one side of the front row. And actually, it does depend on who else you've picked, where this person ends up. But Kelsey Clifford in the front row is in everybody's team of the year. Another player who, it seems like she's been around for ages, actually, but she's actually still only 21, 22, if that. 21, I think. And again, just about on the bubble of England reckoning as well, when we had a bit of a mini crisis at prop. And we've had a mini crisis at prop at Saracens as well, but Kelsey has been incredibly consistent throughout all of that, and is very slowly rising up the table of Saracens appearance record holders, despite only being 21. So she's got a pretty bright future, probably, if we can hang on to her, which we obviously hope we do. But very, very good season for Kelsey, isn't it?
Again, she's just come on leaps and bounds. She's consistent. You can see she's enjoying her rugby, and as you mentioned there before, she's been part of the England setup. She got a debut this year, and it's well deserved. I think she's just made that step from England under-20s now, and straight into that senior setup with ease, and surrounded by other quality players. She must just be loving her rugby at the minute, and I think there's a few that will be learning from Kelsey as much as she's learning from them now, with all the experience that she's got. She seems to have been around for ages, with the number of appearances that she's had. But as you say, you have to remember that actually she's still quite young, but is clearly relishing the experience when she gets in there, whether she's starting the game or whether she's coming on to finish the game off.
Exactly. And at tight head, which is where Kelsey has played the majority of her season, we've been pretty consistent. Her and Alex Ellis as well played pretty well. Alex has been mostly off the bench when we've had enough people to choose from. Before we actually go on to what most people have picked, I've taken artistic license in my team, and I have picked Alex Ellis in it, and I've moved Kelsey Clifford over to the other side, because actually the two of them, between them, have had fantastic seasons. That's the way I went. But at Loosehead, Kelsey did play a few games, but so did just about everyone else.
Yeah.
We have had all sorts going on. I'm just going to run through, before we talk about who other people have picked, I'm just going to run through what's happened this season, because it is pretty incredible, really. Jodie Turl started playing in the Cup, picked up an injury, which is where Kelsey took over. Matt Carson and then Maya Montiel, both chopping and changing in the number one shirt, and have both played brilliantly well. Pretty sure Mac might have had an injury at some point too. And all through this time, we've got no Hannah Bottoman. Rocky Clark played one game. Donna Rose has been missing all season at tight head as well. It's not been very good for our props this year. But within all of that, there's probably 5 or 6 names on top of Kelsey Clifford and Alex Ellis that you could choose from here. So you're thinking, Joe?
So I absolutely agree with you. Firstly, I think Maya was an absolutely fantastic pickup. Again, I don't think, with the exception of when she got her knock playing against Loughborough after only being on the pit field for about 3 minutes, I don't think I've seen her without a smile on her face. She's clearly enjoyed joining Saracens and being around the girls there. Mac seems to have come from absolutely nowhere into the England setup. Obviously, with the Canadian roots, but has been brilliant and a regular in the Red Roses Six Nations team this year. And again, just really, really consistent. But unfortunate injury start of the season. I just don't think you can, for me, look past Hannah Bottoman, who unfortunately is leaving Saracens at the end of this season to go to Bristol, but has been a stalwart for the club over a number of seasons since she joined. And for me, she slotted into the team. It's probably a slightly sentimental one, knowing that Bots is going, that she makes my team of the year. I think just her absolute passion for the game. She's had an unfortunate number of bumps, both physically and with something being waved out of a referee's pocket during the Worcester game. But Bristol are getting an absolutely fantastic player, and their front row is going to be scary next season. It's just it's a shame that she's going, but Hannah Bottoman makes my team of the year.
That's fair, and a lot of people did agree with you as well, Joe. Although she's not played very much at all this year, Hannah sort of coming back into the fold right at the end. She played in some big games, and she played damn well in them as well. So that definitely is fair. Jez, for what it's worth, made exactly the same deliberations as all of us really, and went for Matt Carson. So there's a huge amount of different combinations that we can do there, but thanks to social media and to Joe, Hannah Bottoman is in the team of the year, and we've got about 9 props on the bench. So yeah, that's that. The rest is really, really tricky in the second row, and depending on how you've picked your team, in the back row as well. I'm not even sure the best way of going through this, but actually I'm just going to pick out a couple of names and whether or not they've made it into people's teams. Because I lumped together Marley Packer, Poppy Cleal, Georgia Evans, and that's before you discuss other players at all. And certainly within the back row, Sharifa Casolo and Grace Moore have been absolutely outstanding. And, it's because we've got Marley Packer and Poppy Cleal and Georgia Evans that we've not mentioned them at all yet. But we absolutely have to, particularly as, depending on how you look at it, both of them have made people's teams of the year. Sharifa first has been playing in the back row. And if she's played like anyone, she has filled the Marley Packer role when Marley's not been there, I think.
All I can say about her is what a player. She won the awards for Saracens Player of the Year this year, and rightly so. Tackling, ball carrying. I mean, the girl just came from nowhere the minute she landed at Saracens this season. Watching her in those early cup games, and we were all sitting there going, "Blimey, who the hell's this girl? Marley's going to struggle to get back in the team." And you're right, she's just in the mould of Marley Packer. And Marley will argue that she wants to carry on playing probably up until at least the next World Cup, and perhaps even beyond. But what a player to learn from Sharifa. And again, she's just what a player. That's all I can say about her. Brilliant.
Yeah, and I think we hope we can keep her. I think is one thing. I mean, she's good enough to be in any team's starting lineup in the league, and we have got people in the way, so we'll see. But on Grace, different type of player to Sharifa, more of a number 8, which is why Jez has got a love-in for her, which is as expected, absolutely right. Whereas Sharifa is that tough defensive, still very good in attack, obviously, but does a lot of work at the breakdown. Grace does as well, but the highlights for her have been that line break, smashing her way through players, making meters. Again, another fantastic player that's come into the team.
Yeah, I'm sure she won't thank me for calling her this, but she is just like a bulldozer. She just crunches through tackles, leg drive. Again, a couple of great tries this season for her. And, again, another one who landed with us early in the season as a new signing, and we thought, oh, who is this person? And we're all just sitting there in awe of her, certainly in those early cup games. But she's just been brilliant and really, really consistent throughout the season. I don't think that she's had a bad game. She scored that brilliant solo try where she just galloped from about the halfway line all the way down into the bottom corner at StoneX, and she's just a fabulous player. Saracens have been really, really lucky with their pickups this season and their new signings, and again another one that we hope to keep hold of going into next season.
Absolutely. And looking at people's team of the year, if we've got Georgia, Poppy, Marley, that's a full back row, or do you get one or even both of those in as well? Now, everyone's done it differently. So before we look at everything as a whole, you can put Poppy Cleal in the second row. You can put Georgia Evans in the second row. It depends what we do. But the consistent 4 and 5 this season has been Louise McMillan and Fee McIntosh, both of whom have been solid, reliable, hard to see where they've had a bad game, and they just do their job reliably well, really. There's all you can really say about that. They've been ultra consistent there, haven't they, both of them?
Yeah, I mean, both of them are line-out queens. I think they've both been outstanding in the line-outs, picking up those arrows from both May and from Jodie, but turning the ball over as well. Louise has been first season, scored a couple of tries. Unfortunate towards the end of the season, unfortunately had glandular fever, and it really hit her for 6. And hopefully she's doing a lot better now and made it back for the semi-final game. But both those players are brilliant players again in the second row, as you say. Consistent. I don't think either of them had a poor game. Fee co-captained at the beginning of the season with Cara, and captained in her own right a couple of games actually, and I think that for her will have done her confidence the absolute world of good, because she really showed some excellent leadership during those games as well that I certainly saw her playing live. And again, a young player that is starting to build all those really great qualities of a second rower that you need. But as you say, we can interchange a number of people. Fee and Louise are more specialist second rowers, so to speak, which is why they both made my team of the year. But yeah, you could arguably put a number of other people into there should you need to.
Yep. And what we have to say is that everybody has done it differently. There's no correct way of picking this team, and I think it shows that in what Alex Osterbury had to do in the semi-final and drop Fee McIntosh to the bench, which incredibly harsh call, but it had to be made because someone has to be on the bench, basically. So, yeah, you've picked that out-and-out second row. I've gone for the option of putting Poppy Cleal in the second row alongside Louise McMillan and picked Sharifa Cazzola, which means I've dropped Fee unbelievably harshly to the bench as well. Jez has managed to pick both of them in the absence of Poppy Cleal, so, Our Instagram followers went very similar to me, but picked Fee McIntosh over Louise McMillan, with Poppy Cleal in the second row and Sharifa Cazzola in the back row. And on Twitter, total artistic licence, didn't pick either Louise McMillan or Fee McIntosh. And their 4 to 8 is Poppy Cleal, Grace Moore, Georgia Evans, Sharifa Cazzola, Marley Packer. So quite who's jumping in the line out there, not 100% sure, but it's a massive back row.
Probably.
So look, there's so many different ways of picking that team, and it's a real testament to how strong we've been this season. Ultimately coming up short, but a huge team effort. But yeah, the last things that we need to do, I'm not going to dwell too much on this because we've spoken about all of them in great depth, but we did ask for a few other awards. A signing of the season. We've made several of them, so many that I split it in two, and we're having a forward and a back for signing of the season. The backs was pretty much a done deal straight away. Jess Breach, plenty of other good signings as well, but she has been incredible. The forwards was a trickier decision, I think. Ultimately, on social media, and I agree, they've picked Sharifa Cazzola, but you could pick Grace Moore, you could pick Louise McMillan, you could pick one of several props. What do you reckon, Joe?
For me, Jess, easy pick in the backs there. Although again, I think Leanne has come in and been brilliant this season as well. So you could argue that Leanne was probably in with a decent shout of getting that as well. I just think for me for the forward of the season, in terms of new signing, for me Sharifa just gets it. and that's just, I think she's so consistent. She might not have she might not be on the try score sheet every single game, but you can just see her all over the pitch, tackling, driving. But Grace Moore would have been within a hairbreadth of that, as would Louise McMillan. I think there's just been some really astute signings in the last 12 months, and we will wait to see with bated breath if and what occurs as the signings start to eke out on social media already in the lead up to the next season. It's going to be like Game of Thrones, I think, over a couple of months.
Absolutely. So the next one we did was a young player of the season, and I arbitrarily chose 24 as the top end for a cut-off there. I do find, in a way, that for the women's game particularly, choosing a young player of the season isn't necessarily the best thing to do, because the development rate is often different. People come in and out of the game. You can be new to the game at 27, 28 and still make a good fist of it. So it is unfair, but I did it anyway. And the three I offered to people to choose from were Kelsey Clifford, Fee McIntosh, and Ella Vivas. And I do realise that I could actually have put Hannah Bottoman in there and forgot. So sorry, everyone. So between those three, on Twitter, you went for Kelsey Clifford. On Instagram, you went for Fee McIntosh. I've gone for Kelsey Clifford as well. I think, she's been ultra consistent this season, but so has Fee and so has Ella. So I think it was a very, very tricky poll all round. But I don't know, Joe, are you going to throw anything into the mix?
No, again, I went with Kelsey, and I think some of that will just be about the consistency she's had this season, and probably most of last season as well. She was there or thereabouts. I think her breakthrough this year has just been in that international setup with the Red Roses as well, which I think will only just make her a better player. You know, having Mac in there playing with her, both with the international and the club scene, as well as all the other experience you've got. You know, you've got Hannah Potterman, you've got Alex Ellis. They're all Maya Montiel. They're all international front rowers. It's just an absolute nightmare for a coach trying to pick. And I've learned to appreciate Alex Ostbury and his coaching team's role even more, having struggled with that team of the year. Because, as you say, arguably, we even struggled to make it a team of 23, if we're being brutally honest, and fill the bench. You know, we've had a couple of retirements this year with both Kat Evans and Vicky Fleetwood. Fleeto, again, unfortunate with her injury. If she'd have been playing consistently, as we know, she has over years and years of playing international and club rugby, we'd probably all be thinking about Fleeto on the list there as well. So it's been a tremendous season for individuals within the club, but for the club as a whole, really, I think.
Yeah, and on that basis, there's about 25 players to choose from for a player of the season across the whole squad. I did the hard bit and I narrowed it down to a poll of 4. So I think that's where my remit ends, to be honest, because that was a harsh thing to do. So to get those 4 down to 1 was incredibly tough. There's been a lot of votes for May Campbell. There's been a lot of votes for Marley Packer. Poppy Cleal in there as well, Jess Breach as well, and everyone else that we could mention. But things are split, so I'm putting pressure on you, Joe. It's coming down to you.
You know, as I say, you could have picked any one of those, plus added a few more. But for me, the player of the season, with their consistency, just their sheer will to put their body on the line all the time, scored some brilliant tries, is always there or thereabouts, is May Campbell. I think she's just been absolutely brilliant this season. And I'd like to see her next season come often over to the fans and speak to us with less blood coming from her nose and less black eyes. If I'm going to say anything, but if she's going to go and throw her body on the line and score these tries, I'll take it. I'll just make sure I carry around a few more ice packs for her.
Can't really say fairer than that. And, there is a symmetry there with the awards that myself and Jez handed out last season. We were split as well with Marley Packer and May Campbell. And in the end, we divvied it down the middle and we said Marley was our professional player of the year and May was our not professional player of the year. And you never know, May might have some good news soon and she might be getting into that England reckoning a little bit more. So wouldn't qualify as a non-professional player of the year anymore, but she's won it outright this year. So thank you very much, Jo. That is it. All of our awards, women's season done. Thank you very much, Jo, taking us through that. It's been really, really difficult. Back to Jez.
Hi, Alex Osterbury here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome to our big interview and returning to the Fezcast. We spoke to Lucy Wray at the start of the season and talked about a lot of different subjects. And we're really happy that Lucy's come back because actually there's a lot of those subjects we talked about that first time, Lucy, that have sort of like developed and perhaps need further discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm keen to sit in the hot seat and be quizzed by you both. So let's go.
Well, absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, it's me and Matt in the seat today. And I mean, first of all, I mean, we sit here now, a couple of weeks after the end of the men's season. And we're looking forward to the summer. As I say, we're looking forward to a summer off from presenting the Fezcast and producing it. But I mean, give us a few thoughts on the season at the club and how well it's gone. I mean, the Premiership win. I mean, how good does it feel?
Yeah, it's a weird one for me because I think the overwhelming feeling was actually relief. It was just like this kind of, I could feel it building. When we went down by 2 points, I could feel myself getting emotional, going, oh God, I'm not sure I can cope with losing again. Because I think actually it's the pain of losing that stays with you the longest. And actually the happiness of winning is it's amazing in the moment, but then it's gone. It was last week. And you kind of, you tick the box and you're like, right, next thing. But for me, it was just that, I only allowed myself to believe it with about 90 seconds to go. And just felt so relieved, mainly because I guess the level of expectation is I expected us to win because like, I know we've got an amazing squad. We had amazing people and obviously anything can happen in a final, but when you put that level of expectation in it, it's just that the relief that we've done it, that we've done what we set out to do. And kind of you wanted that win for so many people, like for you guys, the fans, but for the players, the staff, everyone that kind of stuck with us through a pretty rocky patch. And so that was the most satisfying, to see the happiness in other people's faces for me. And there was a lot of players that actually was their first Premiership win. Elliot Daly hadn't won a Premiership before, Benno, Max, Theo. So it's an amazing experience for them. It's their first one, and that feels different as well. So incredible seeing them go through that. And a lot of staff that have never experienced a Premiership win either. Young S&C team, physios. So for everyone, really, it was kind of special.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there was lots of words bandied around after the final and the immediate aftermath about, a culmination of a journey, an end of a period of time. Saracens back where they belonged. All these different things. I mean, how does it feel? Is it like the end of a chapter now, or?
I don't think it's ever really the end of a chapter when you work with people who are so unbelievably competitive to set the standards. And we don't often talk about winning actually, but we talk about wanting to be market leaders and setting the standards, and obviously we love winning. And I think that it's just like I had a chat with Mark before. It's like, right, how do you motivate people to go again? And it's often not overthinking it. It's not, there's no kind of rocket science. It's just brilliant basics and putting people first, looking after each other and like enjoying winning together. But I can't tell you how much like detail and planning and thought goes into absolutely everything with Saracens, and the people you have doing it who like care unbelievably will stay up for like 6-7 hours just looking at tapes, analysing data, looking at and thinking ahead. I think we've got a very good group of people who plan for 3 years' time, 5 years' time, like what the overall ambition is, like what's that Northern Star that we're really trying to go for. So I don't think the journey ever ends. It's just like another kind of magic moment in the journey. But it just kind of sets the sights higher for what people want to achieve.
Well, absolutely. It's the story of I'll say the 6 Ps because the 7 Ps has got a naughty word in it, but the 6 Ps, proper preparation and planning prevents poor performance. But Matt, I'll hand over to you now because I know you've got a very important question to ask.
Well, to be honest, the first thing I was going to say was that I'm probably one of the most glad people that we won that final, because if we didn't, then I would never go to a final again, because I've got too many painful memories of going to Cardiff and losing, and last year's final as well, and starting to think that I was the curse. So I was there this time round, all good. But yeah, I've got a question that's actually popped up a little bit around some of the forums and things, and from a lot of other fans. And actually, the question so far has been about Leicester Tigers winning last year, and there's a winner's audit that we're aware happens. And obviously, the spotlight is now on us. Now, given the obvious history that we've had, it's obviously going to be in a lot of people's minds how that process happens, how long it takes, because we obviously, from a fan side, haven't even heard anything about Leicester yet. Maybe that means it's all good. I don't know. But just, I'm aware that there's probably bits that you can't tell us. But how far down the pathway with that audit for the winners of the league are we? Because we want to put that to bed.
It's really only just started, because it's quite a kind of very rigorous process. And actually, we're like, this sounds a bit strange, but we're actually quite excited to do it, because we know we're so confident that we have done everything in our powers to make sure that we are like super good on the salary cap. Hopefully we are like gold standards, setting the standards for how to manage the cap and how to communicate with the salary cap officer. So, we think we're very confident in the process. It is rigorous. I know we've just had to hand over our servers because they like go through every single email. They look at tax returns of over half the squad. They can take mobile phones and look at WhatsApp groups, WhatsApp messages on my phone or anyone's phone. They choose who they want. So it's quite a lengthy process, and it can take a while. But all I can say is that, I think, in a weird way, we're quite excited to do it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think, and it was something I think I'd like to revisit later on in the interview in relation to going forward in the future, if that's okay, Lucy. But, we talk about investment, we talk about money, we talk about all these things. When we interviewed you before, you talked about there being a 5-year plan in place in reference to investment and the club becoming debt-free, with all of the development of the new stand and everything else that goes on. And we've seen great news today about the new Saracens primary school as well that's come out. It's absolutely fantastic. But, you talked about that 5-year plan. We're now getting on towards 1 year, a full season away from you discussing that. I mean, how is the club doing against that? Are you behind schedule? Are you ahead of schedule? Or are you bang on schedule at the moment?
I think we are tracking really well on the plan, and it's all basically about cash. So we put the funding model together and the capital raise of 32 million, and in that we had lots of that money was spent on like finishing the West Stand and stadium development and other things, and obviously a large portions of it were for ongoing losses and trending in the right direction. So we have stayed within the funding model for every year of that plan to date. So we're coming into the final year of the funding model. So from that perspective, given that, we did lose 2 home games last season, and actually all our fans are incredibly loyal and understanding about that. But inflation, cost of living prices, energy costs, tough economic period as well. So I think we have ridden that and adjusted very well and stayed within the funding model, which takes quite a lot of discipline. So I think our senior team and the finance team have done brilliantly to do that. And we've continued to invest in the women's game and the Oasis and the playground at Stonex Stadium. I would say, if I'm honest, I would have, but maybe because I'm glass half full, I would have loved to be ahead of the plan and beating it and smashing it out the park. But we're not. We're right on it. We're staying within that funding model, which I think actually is a pretty good result given everything that every business has had to go through over the last few years and over this period. 2024, which is the summer after the end of this 5-year funding model, and obviously we're discussing the future funding model and where we're going, but that 2024 season is quite a pivotal year because you've got the new professional game agreement between the RFU and the clubs for English players. You've got a new broadcast contract. We've got some big sponsorship contracts which are up for renewal. It'll be the first year of those new contracts. So that, although next year we will look to grow our revenue and still kind of trend in the right direction in terms of the losses, that 24-25 season will be quite pivotal for us. But we do, sorry, I'm going on quite a lot, but it's quite a difficult question. But so we try and focus on how we control our own destiny. So we're not, like, I don't want to be reliant on one broadcast contract or an RFU deal kind of determining our future. So we look at the gap that we have to get to kind of a break-even level at an EBITDA level. And we really focus on breaking that down and where that's going to come from. And this is where I think diversifying revenue lines is really important. And that kind of Saracens group level will come into it. So, there's only a certain amount that can come from kind of growth of traditional rugby revenue lines like ticketing and hospitality. Like, some of it will have to come from a bit of like out of the box thinking in terms of the group and tenants at Stonex Stadium and how we use the stadium and the real estate, how we use our events businesses and the UK investor show that the group owns to bring in cash, and how we kind of grow revenue as a group. Because ultimately, I don't care where the money's going to come from if we just think of it as a group. And we need to think kind of differently, because I don't think a rugby club in isolation is going to get to that kind of financial sustainability on its own.
Well, that's a really interesting thing you say there, Lucy. And it takes me on to our next question about the current status of top flight rugby union in England. And I mean, we've seen 3 clubs go to the wall this season, Worcester, Wasps and London Irish. And I've got 2 questions that perhaps you may not be able to answer, but I'm sure we'll have an opinion on. But first of all, why did it happen? And second of all, and perhaps more importantly, why was it allowed to happen?
I mean, I guess why did it happen is, I think a lot of clubs, and I've spoken to you guys before, I think when we spoke, we talked about a table only having one leg and needing like a wider base and 4 legs. And that's why we chose to like bring new investors in and a brilliant consortium of investors who are fully committed to the club. Because I think what's happened is, like every business, I mean, like hundreds and thousands of business have gone into administration or failed over the last 4 or 5 years. This is not unique to rugby. But I think a lot of clubs are reliant on one shareholder to keep them going. And, whatever happens to that shareholder's business, it just, the sum of losses having to go through COVID and everything I've just mentioned with the kind of energy prices. And if you don't have a long-term commitment of funds and you're kind of not just reliant on one person, you can get into real trouble. And I think it'd be wrong of me to comment on individual clubs and their cases, but I think ultimately that's what happens. You don't have the long-term commitment. You're too reliant on one person.
That's interesting you say that. I don't know if Matt agrees with me, because, I mean, a lot of criticism will come from other clubs, is in so much as that Saracens for many years were beholden to Nigel as the main shareholder, a man who had money that he wished to invest in rugby and did so, and because of that gained a lot of success.
Certainly, my family's always been very aware that the club was vulnerable when it was just us. like definitely.
Mm.
Because you never know what someone's personal circumstances are. You don't know how it's going to affect someone's business, or like, that's helping to fund the club. So, you just, and that's where we are all in. Yes, we all love the game, but it's not a hobby anymore. It's a business. It's a big business, and you have to run it like a business. You have to run it, sustainably. You have to, think what you can afford, work within your means, think forward thinking. What's the next 5 years? What funds are we going to need over this? I think maybe people underestimated the impact of COVID and thought it would be kind of a one season thing. And actually the repercussions have been, several years now, and it's still ongoing. So yeah, I think that would be my take on it. And I don't think we set the standard of one person, because that happens in sport all over the world. It's normally like, it's not just us, like one, that's every sport organization. It's just like with football, like it used to be millionaires own football clubs, and then it was billionaires, and now it's like whole countries that own football clubs, because that's how much it costs. Sport costs a huge amount of money, and you've got to look at your own business and how to fund it. And you could look at Newcastle, and they run it really tightly. They run it in a very kind of sustainable way, and I'd say they run it and they run it within their means, and they run it responsibly.
Yeah, that's very good. I absolutely agree there. Matt, do you want to come in?
Well, to be honest, what I was going to say actually is that in all of that, we're obviously incredibly grateful to Nigel for just everything he's ever done for the club. Yeah, that's what we have to do, really. And you're right. I think just the fact that rugby has evolved quite a lot over the last 30 years. And yeah, we're not in a position anymore where you make yourselves very vulnerable if you're, like I say, beholden to one person. And in another parallel universe, things might have gone very, very badly for us. But one of the questions we'd written down was about ensuring how clubs don't go to the wall in future. And I think you've answered that really with talking about diversifying income. I mean, I absolutely hate the term agile business, but that is exactly what Saracens needs to be. And so that works perfectly for me. But
I was going to ask, you did ask why was it allowed to happen, which I've seen a lot in the media, and I do, because essentially I've heard people say, why did PRL allow that to happen? But Premiership rugby is essentially the clubs. It's 75% the clubs. So what you'd be asking the other clubs to do, who are all struggling and losing money, is to prop up 3 other clubs and pay off well over 150 million of accumulated debt across it, which was never going to be able to happen. You'd lose the whole Premiership if you did that. So I'm not sure.
And also the RFU as well, Lucy. When people are criticising the RFU, but they've got a wider responsibility. I mean, it's very easy for us looking at Saracens and Wasps and whoever is, but there's hundreds and hundreds of grassroots clubs who rely, and Saracens and all the other clubs rely on these grassroots clubs giving the first exposure to players who are going to play for Saracens in the future.
Yeah, it was reported that I think Wasps had well over 100 million of debt on their own, and both Worcester and London Irish had tens of millions of debt. I find it difficult to read from people on social media that they expected the RFU or PRL, which is essentially the other clubs, just to write out a check and solve those problems. It's just that was never, ever going to be possible.
This is something that we didn't write down, so I'm not going to expect you to respond to this, Lucy. But the other thing that we've seen in all of that is people saying that it's entirely our fault with everything that happened with the salary cap and things like that. But as you say, Wasps, tens and hundreds of millions in debt. The Premiership rugby salary cap is a lot less than that.
Yes, I don't think we can be responsible for 100 million of debt and tens of millions of debt. I'm not sure. When a salary is set at 5 and 6 million respectively, we can be blamed for that.
Of course, yeah. Well, apologies for chucking that in, but it's off my chest. Moving on from that, though, there is a sporting commission that's been set up, that's being led by Nigel Melville to hopefully work through some of the perceived issues of rugby in England. Is it something that Saracens and the board are sort of being consulted on or informed of? Are we involved at all in the setup of that, or is it just something that's ticking over at the moment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's been kind of worked through and planned with all the clubs as stakeholders, and we're fully behind it, because basically it's you as you use the word agile, but you can't be agile if you've got to have every single club agree, and we've all got different priorities and different conflicts and different business plans. So you do need something that can unblock the system basically and allow decisions to be made rapidly, quickly, effectively, because otherwise you're asking the PRL executives to kind of manage the league with one hand tied behind their back. I think we welcome that it's made up of independents as well, because I just think it's wrong to have clubs judging other clubs or determining the outcome of anything that might affect another club, because ultimately you can't think other than with your own club hat on. It's very, very difficult to be completely independent. So we fully support it, and have everyone kind of got a chance to veto the non-exec, the INEDs that were coming on the commission, and they look like really good people, and I think it's a great step forward.
So I suppose, it leads us on to the last part of this question, in so much as is that it now? Is it a 10-club premiership that's going forward? Whether there's promotion, relegation, whatever, if there's other clubs that are going to come in, we don't know. But 10-club premiership, I suppose, less amount of clubs makes it easier to agree as well. I mean, unless you've got somebody who is a bit, the bolshy one in the corner, shall we say? I don't know. But I mean, is that it now? Is it? This is the model going forward, a 10-club premiership? To my knowledge, yes. It's a 10-team structure. I say that because obviously nobody wanted it to happen in this way, but for quite a long time, broadcasters especially have been pushing for a 10-team league, because it deconflicts the calendar. So what broadcasters and I'm sure fans hate is when, Saracens are missing half their squad because it's in the autumn internationals or the Six Nations, and you have one of your biggest matchups. I think we've played Leicester and Sale in recent seasons in the Six Nations window, and we've got used to managing that, but that's not what people want to see. And ultimately, it's what the fans want, and it's what the TV broadcasters want, is that they want less conflict and less clashes, and that will actually help PRL and RFU work collaboratively together, because it just removes conflict. And so I think that obviously devastating that it had to happen by default almost in this way, but it is one of the things that people have been speaking about for a long time in terms of, and it's good for player welfare as well in terms of managing game time. So yeah, I do think it's the way forward. I think it's here to stay, and in time it would be good to sort out Premiership 2 as well and make sure that there's a thriving second division. But I do think the focus has to be on cementing Premiership 1 and making sure it's financially sustainable. And then ultimately, I think everyone is behind getting a strong Prem 2 or whatever that looks like. Well, indeed. And the chat around the cup competition next year, including championship sides or whatever, I think you're right. It's all steps in the right direction. So now we'll move on to next season, if we may, Lucy, and we'll revisit what we were talking about earlier on as well. And say, for next season, we're seeing an exodus of talent from a number of clubs, with players heading overseas. And we're seeing the Japanese yen being very powerful, the French euro checkbooks are being opened left, right, and centre. We've managed to negate an awful lot of that. We've not lost players in the same way as, for argument's sake, Exeter Chiefs, the prime example. If you go on Twitter, you see almost an announcement every day of another player that was leaving at one point or other during the season. The question is, and this is, it's a fairly open question, I suppose, but how has Saracens managed to hold on to the players that we have done? Bearing in mind that perhaps there's going to be more announcements over the summer, we don't really know. And what do you do to retain the loyalty of those players? Because it isn't all about cash in the back pocket, is it?
No, I was doing a talk internally to our team about like the recent journey we've all been on. So, November 2019 was salary cap. And then, got to remember it now, but then we were relegated. Then we lost Allianz. Then COVID hit. And then we lost the opening game. Then we were worried the championship wouldn't get started. Then we lost the opening game of the championship. But then we won the championship, and the women's team won the P15s. We got to the final, lost in the last minute, and now we've won our 6th title. I was like, that's quite some journey for under 3 years. And how have we kept everyone together during that time? Like players, key staff, everyone together, fans. And ultimately, it is just because of culture, and it is because of people, and it is because we've put people first. Winning's been important, but it's not the be all and end all. It has to be done in the right way by looking after people and making decisions in their best interest. And I think, what we went through actually strengthened those relationships hugely. And I think because we've been looking after people and working on our culture and relationships for well over a decade, like you build up an incredible loyalty. And I think that's why we continue to retain players, because they know they're part of something special. They're part of something bigger than just winning a trophy.
I was interested. I don't know whether, again, Matt, whether you agree with me. I sometimes get the impression that if there was a player who was perhaps wavering about doing something, that maybe Owen Farrell turns up and gives him one of these Paddington Bear stares and just says, no, you're part of this. I love to say team or squad, you're part of this family. And that's definitely, when you see after the final as well, the togetherness of all of the guys there, I suppose that's what makes a difference. And I suppose, I guess that just comes from the top, from yourself and all the other people who run the club in the way that you run it so well.
Yeah, it's definitely not just me, but a lot of people, like from, our board and shareholders all the way down. There's some, very committed, passionate people who all have kind of one goal and one way of wanting to do things. And I think that's very powerful. I was going to say, in terms of the squad's kind of done. There aren't any more announcements in terms of players leaving or anything like that. There's a couple of longish, medium, long-term injuries that we might get some injury dispensation for, where we can bring in a few extra players. So just say watch this space on that. But nobody else is leaving.
No, so Big Billy's staying, and that's good news. Brilliant. Yeah. Excellent. Matt, go on, over to you.
No, we could sit and talk about players staying and going all the time, couldn't we? But that's not what we're here for. What I did want to say just off the back of that is, obviously you did talk to Saracens members as well last week or the week before, and actually I was going to bring up that timeline that you mentioned, obviously, of all of the bad stuff that has happened over the last few years, and just how quickly. Recovery is the wrong word, I think, but just how quickly everything's developed from that and the journey that we've been on. I think off the back of that, having spoken to a few people afterwards, I think it actually grounded a lot of us as fans on just how short a period of time that really is. Because I think for us, season by season, last season, Freddie Burns' drop goal seems like a long, long time ago now. And actually, it does all distort a little bit, particularly with COVID and things involved. So that is... I'm very grateful for you being there for that as well. But yeah, sort of sliding into other bits about players. We've obviously got a Rugby World Cup coming up, and that always changes players' values almost overnight. Sometimes, if they have a good World Cup, a bad injury, and things. What sort of strategy do you have at Saracens to sort of keep an eye on what's going on at World Cups and what then potentially happens the next summer with players all of a sudden becoming hot property or not in some cases? Is it actually quite a challenge for you to cope with that sort of sliding scale of what happens with players?
It's more for the coaching team. It's more how you. I'd say the trickiest thing is how you transition players back into your squad after a World Cup, because some will be really happy, some will be really disappointed, some might be injured. So I think that they put a lot of thought into that, into how they kind of, for the players who weren't at the World Cup and have gone through a tough pre-season and played really hard. And actually we've got quite good, because we're good at managing that through the Autumn International Six Nations anyway. So it's no different. But ultimately, we want a winning England team because, like, for English rugby to be prosperous, ultimately everyone wants England to win, because that's only going to be good for like participation levels, like audience growth, everything in this country. So we want a winning England team. We want winning clubs in Europe. And I think that everything kind of cascades down from there. And we want our players to be successful on an international stage. Like, we want that for them. When you kind of put people first, you've got to put the club aside to one. So, otherwise we'd want them all to get knocked out before the quarterfinals, which is not what we want. We want them to go on and, we want Owen Farrell to be, the England captain lifting that trophy. We want that moment for him and his family and the club and everything. So kind of, there are the consequences of salary inflation, etc. But going back to that loyalty point, I think we've created an environment that is much more than just about money, and we've created an environment that is incredibly difficult to leave. So so I it's something we'll manage, but it's not something we're too worried about.
Well, I suppose that's the 2 points there are. I mean, one, it must be a nice problem to have if you do have 10 England players coming back as world champions, as potentially could happen, and 10 players suddenly turn around and saying, well, we're the marquee player now. And I mean, that's a nice challenge to have those players. And obviously, second of all, the one thing we would say is that no player is bigger than the club. I mean, I'm a huge West Ham fan, Lucy, and, we've won a European Cup, and now looking at Declan Rice moving on. But it will go on. Somebody else will come in, and, even if it's Maro Itoje or whoever may be looking for a new challenge after the World Cup, they're not bigger than the club, are they, Lucy?
No, you're dead right. No one person's bigger than the club.
No, that's great to see. I'd like to move on now, if we may, to the women's team, because obviously the women's team have had a disappointing end to the season. I mean, for the first time ever, they're not in the final of the competition. It's been a very disjointed season for them with the World Cup out in New Zealand, and players like Marley Packer and Poppy Clear and everything. They've probably had more disappointments in this season than they've had in the rest of their rugby career. I mean, how is the club dealing with those sort of challenges for that side of the team?
I think the women's game's exciting in a way because so many other clubs are now taking it like really seriously and investing money, and so it's going to become so much more competitive. So to kind of keep ahead of the game and keep setting standards and keep being in finals, we're just going to have to work a hell of a lot harder. And I think that excites us. And we're looking at how we can kind of strengthen the coaching team for the women next year around Alex and get more support, and how we can better the environment and build them. But God, it's margins in Exeter. That was, it could have gone the other way. At half time, I stupidly felt very confident and we had total control. But knockout rugby, that's what happens. And fair play to Exeter, because actually Tony Rowe has done an incredible job down there with the women's team and really kind of gone for it and invested. We actually need that to happen. You want that to happen. So many years it's just dominated by Saracens and Harlequins, which isn't good for the league. But now you've got Bristol and Exeter and Gloucester and others, and Leicester joining next season. It's going to become a much better product, which is great for the game, which is fantastic. It's what we want.
Well, indeed, as well. And I mean, obviously, it gives you extra revenue at StoneX as well, because the more games you put on of the women at a higher, greater profile, the more bums on seats, more people spending money in the concessions, whatever. It can only be good, can't it?
Yeah. And actually, to be honest, losing makes us work harder. It's like you learn more from losing, and it makes you really double down. And we kind of go back to that pain of losing lasts a lot longer. It does really push you and drive you to make sure you're not there in the same place next season.
I think it's pretty refreshing, really, when we hear the CEO of a club say, "Actually, do you know what? It's not such a bad thing losing occasionally, or at least everyone being more competitive." It is that that bigger picture, which is brilliant. And another part of the bigger picture is the Mavericks. We've been lucky enough to speak to a few of the players on the odd occasion and coaches as well, and they've been very nice to us and not taken the mick too much about our complete lack of netball knowledge. But yeah, recently I spoke to Kira Rothwell and Lisa Mather, and one of the things that actually, before we even started recording, they wanted to make sure that they get in is just talking about how the culture at Saracens is filtering into their team, and how they were very, very grateful, to be honest, about the fact that Saracens are involved as they are with things like the S&C team being full time and them having access to all of the same facilities like that. The main question really was is that a very deliberate, very conscious action that's evolving from the club? But actually, I wanted to ask them as well, and we didn't quite get to it properly. Is there things that are now filtering back from the Mavericks to the rest of the Saracens group in terms of culture, ways of working, and things? And how much are we all learning from having the Mavericks involved with Saracens?
Yeah, well, hopefully, as you can imagine, when we first started talking, I talked about like the depth of thought and detail that goes in. This wasn't just an accident, but like what I can say is it's actually been like because what we've tried to do is integrate both women's teams into the whole kind of group setup. So Philip Morrow, who's the GM across all three teams, has been, and I remember, like, we're actually really proud to sit 12 months forward, because 12 months ago, or a bit over 12 months ago, the Mavericks wasn't a happy place. There was a lot of just unhappy players, and I wouldn't go as far as saying a toxic culture, but it just wasn't a Saracens way of doing things. And we kind of were looking at ourselves, gosh, a bit like you guys going, we are slight newcomers to netball. And so we're going to have to get some really good people in. But it was a very kind of conscious decision, as we need to make changes, because if it's carrying our, they're part of the Saracens family and it's carrying our brand, we want it to be done in our way. And actually, one of the exciting, challenging things is, okay, we've found a way of doing things for our men's team, but how can we do that across, multiple teams or different sports, indeed, with netball, and applying the same kind of, I guess, values and kind of motivations, and that was exciting with the Mavs to make the changes and be bold and make some big calls. And promote Cam, who's a very young coach, but has done unbelievably well. She has got an unbelievably happy squad who love the culture. And that's that transformation in 12 months, it's so exciting now for next season. They've just been doing recruitment over the last 2 weeks, which we're not allowed to announce England netball rules till, I think, mid-July. But recruitment's gone unbelievably well. Whereas last season, it was very difficult to attract players, or indeed retain players, because we just it wasn't a happy place to be. So, giving them full-time S&C, full-time physio, a full-time team manager, putting the ecosystem there, but then also just making them feel part of everything, like part of the photo shoots, and getting all our club partners behind the Mavericks, inviting them to all the club events. I've seen loads of the Mavericks at the men's games and the women's games, and our women's rugby players at the Mavs games, and all of our men's coaches take their kids to the Mavs games, and it just feels there's much more interconnectivity and support. I've seen Goody after a men's game, seeing the Mavs players and inviting them over for a drink in the changing room. And so just everyone looking out for each other and working together. And I'm really excited for the Mavs season next season. I just think we could break into that top four, and it'd be brilliant to see.
Well, that's great to hear, Lucy, and I think it's all credit to yourself and everybody within the organisation that there is such a drive still, and such ambition left within the club. I mean, it'd be very easy to turn around and say 6 trophies for the men and rest on laurels. For us as fans, it's we've come accustomed to success, and as much as we don't want to appear arrogant or entitled or anything, we quite like it, and we like to see it across more places. And we want to see competitiveness as well. But it's wonderful to be part of this Saracens organisation, as it were, even in our small part, and be, and hopefully get the word out there. I was going to say, perhaps now's the time to finish up and just say, is there any message that you'd like to get out to the fan base in particular, to the people who listen to the Fezcast?
Yeah, I think when we won that final, it was as much for, I see kind of our fans as shareholders in the club. Like, everyone's got skin in the game. Like, everyone feels like has Saracens under their skin. And that's why it works. Like, that's why it's so important for everyone, like the whole Saracens family. And I was listening, sorry, slight digression. I was listening to a podcast with the CEO of Disney, and he was saying, like, the best stories that Disney creates is when it's an underdog who becomes a hero. And the problem is, like, Saracens are normally not the underdogs. Like, and we have to live with that expectation. And that's quite hard, because you can never be everyone's hero then. Actually, more people would probably like to see us fail, because that's just the English psyche, is once someone gets on top, they want to see them come down. But what I say is, in terms of our fans, like, we have an unbelievably committed fan base. And if you guys, every single one of you, can introduce the club to one more person, just on a match day, a new family, anyone, like that kind of, like, just that word of mouth, because we are not very far. I'm going to sound really commercial now, but we're not very far off having like scarcity value at StoneX Stadium. Like 1,000 tickets a game probably is what we're targeting. And that opens up huge, getting scarcity and being demand led for ticketing will put us in an infinitely stronger position as a club. So I, like, without burdening you all, because genuinely I see you guys as like absolutely integral to everything, and we do all this, we want to win and create these memories for all of you guys. But if you can help us spread the word, get people to renew, introduce one new fan, like, if you can all help us, then that would be phenomenal.
Well, absolutely. So that's what we try to do here with the Fezcast, and we'll continue to do that. We're going to have our recharge of our batteries, because me and Matt's got to put this all together this afternoon as well.
Sorry, Matt.
He does all the production side of things. But yeah, no, we've thoroughly enjoyed it. And we thoroughly enjoy being able to speak to the likes of yourself and also the players, and, getting the opportunity to give Theo, Dan and Toby Knight a bit of a pep talk on the Fezcast was great before the final. I'm taking my little bit of responsibility.
Yeah, I to do a 50-22, because that was excellent.
It was, yeah. Well, that was one of my golden moments of the season. So, I mean, but yeah, look, we really do appreciate what you do for us, and hopefully that, we reciprocate that back to you guys as well. But yeah, thank you for coming on, and from everybody at the Fezcast, and obviously the wider fan base, we thank you for a fantastic season and fantastic experience at StoneX, Twickenham, wherever it may be. And long may it continue.
Yeah, a whole new season of memories to look forward to. So, yeah, thank you guys, and don't have too long off. We need you back on the treadmill soon. But yeah, you can have a little break.
Well, absolutely. I suppose we'll be back very soon. But Lucy, thank you ever so much for your time. And as I say,
thank you both. Thanks for everything you do. And look forward. I'm very happy to chat whenever. So enjoy it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. And we'll speak to you again soon. You too.
Thanks, Lucy.
Bye.
Hi guys, I'm Alex Linton and I'm a proud Looseheads ambassador.
I'm Sydney Gregson and I'm a Looseheads ambassador.
We're a rugby mental health charity working to tackle the stigma. You can find us at Looseheads on all social media channels or at looseheads.co.uk.
The Looseheads mission is to place a mental health lead at every rugby club. Get in touch now to find out more. Take care and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Enjoy the rest of the pod.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to our last bit. And yeah, thank you to Lucy Wray there for another illuminating conversation. And thank her for her honesty, Matt.
Yeah, it's brilliant, really. I mean, we sort of said off air a little bit that, and in speaking to her afterwards, we sort of felt like it ended up as a bit of a grilling rather than a friendly chat at one point. But it just shows that how keen she is to be open with us and fans in general. So yeah, hopefully everyone's taken plenty away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly did and really enjoyed that. And yeah, we'll get back in touch next season to chat to her next season, hopefully. But yeah, we need to finish off this last Fezcast of the season with a few thanks. I mean, the first thing to say, Matt, is that the first 2 seasons we did it on our own, and we thought, well, let's get some more people on, and we have to say thanks to Sam, Barry, John, and Joe for their absolutely fabulous involvement. Well, I don't know about you, but it seemed like almost, well, we did go to weekly shows as well. We've seen it done even more well this year.
Yeah, it's been a busy one, hasn't it? Yeah, the challenge of going to a weekly show.
Or a daily show to build up to the final.
Well, no, yeah, fair play to you with that one. But yeah, we've doubled the work. But yeah, it's been brilliant to have 4 regular guests on it, and it just means that everyone has different voices to listen to rather than yours and mine. Although I'm sure between us, we probably still take up most of the airtime, particularly you. But
I have plenty to say, not all of it. Listen to the ball, but there you go. But yeah, no. So yeah, but thank you to those guys for coming in board and everything, and also thank you to all of our guests as well that we've had on during the season, from the club, from the various different teams. Too many to mention. The guys from out, like Hayden as well, who's come on, Baz Barrington, who's left the club and come back, and everything. Some legends. It was just absolutely fantastic to speak to all of these people, Matt.
It is, yeah, and it sounds like, particularly with Jo coming on board with all of her contacts in the women's game, we've actually got a little bit of a queue forming of people coming on the show. So, what I would say is that if anyone out there is listening, if you want to come onto this show, just get in touch with us. And equally, if you want to get involved in what we're doing as well, we've had our panel of 4 extra people. There's no reason why we can't have more than that, because more voices make it more interesting, hopefully. So yeah, if anyone does want to get involved, get in touch with us on all of our social media and things. But yeah, it's been fantastic having a variety of people from both around the club and externally as well. Lots of different perspectives. One thing actually I want to quickly jump into, I know we're not going to talk about all of our specific guests, but Will Hooley, having him on the show, one of our best shows I think this season. I think that reflected in the downloads that we had, but he's just announced his retirement. So all the very best to Will. I'm sure he's got plenty of irons in the fire for what he's up to next. But yeah, that's one thing I wanted to get in anyway.
And yeah, and you talk about downloads, and I suppose that's the final thanks, because at the end of the day, I mean, we could record this and could be speaking into a vacuum and into a void, and plenty of people would say that perhaps we should do, but there are plenty of you who do download every show, and I mean, we're averaging that's 200, 250 downloads a show at the moment, which is
per show, yeah,
for our little show. So without you guys listening into us and interacting, and we really do like your interaction on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever, it's really makes it worthwhile doing, and thank you to all of you guys for doing for just tuning in and listening.
Can't say fairer than that, really, can you?
No, absolutely not. Well, look, Matt, time to set back, open pour a brandy, light up a cigar, sit on the sun lounger, have a pina colada or 2 maybe, and keep your eyes on the social medias. I'm sure Matt will be still tweeting from Fezcast SSA when bits and pieces happen, and I will be posting on Facebook and everything. But yeah, have a great summer, everybody, and we'll see you back at the start or before the start of the season to discuss more and more stuff about Saracens with more and more guests and hopefully more and more trophies. Matt, thank you very much for your time, and thank you everybody for listening in. And yeah, all the best, everybody. Thanks for listening in, and ta-ra.
This is the Fezcast.